Good afternoon. Welcome to our panel today on troubled waters. Our speakers will be Ms. Jessica Frederick, Mr. Chris Heisenbo, Mr. Wyatt Kenner, Mr. Andre Espeleta, Mr. Archie Lockalainen, and myself, Shakira Robinson. Today we are going to inform you on the events troubling our waters. We are going to specifically focus on intentional, unintentional, and natural pollutions, illicit discharge, and overfishing. We are going to focus on the causes, events, and possible solutions to these events and or actions. Although many of these topics and categories overlap, they do differ in other aspects. And because there's so much information pertaining to these categories, we are going to split them up into 3 separate categories. So, I hope you all enjoy our presentation, are informed, and are inspired to act. First up, we have Jessica Frederick with our bodies of water.
How are you doing today? I would like to inform you on a few of the bodies of water around the world. Here we have a few of the oceans, a couple seas, and the Gulf. We have the Pacific, the Atlantic, and the Indian Ocean. Some of the seas of the world are the Caribbean Sea, the North Sea, and the Sea of Japan. We also have some gulfs. We have the Mexico Gulf, and we also have Alaska Gulf. These are some rivers and lakes of the United States, some of the main ones. We have the Mississippi River and the Lake Erie River. These canals in the U.S. are used for transportation. They're very vulnerable to spills and pollution and waste from the ships that travel along them. I would also like to tell you and show you some pictures of local bodies of water in Brevard County. Here is a canal in Satellite Beach. Here is the Sebastian Inlet, which also connects to our ocean. Here is St. John's River, which is right off of Lake Washington. I would like to introduce Mr. Chris Heisenbo on intentional water pollution.
Intentional pollution is the purposeful harming of the waters here in Florida. They are done by harmful pollutants. A pollutant is any substance such as a chemical or waste product that is put into the water that causes harm to the sea life and or the quality of the water. A prime example of this is right here in the Indian River Lagoon. This is a picture of the Indian River Lagoon when it was clean before the pollution. It was one of the most beautiful waterways, and many tourists came to see it when they came on cruises or traveled by car to here in Florida. The Indian River Lagoon stretches around about 40% of the east coast of Florida, which is about 160 miles. It actually brings in huge revenue to this area of Florida. It's estimated that before the pollution that happened in the lagoon, about $3.7 billion was generated in revenue from the lagoon's services such as touring, fishing, or anything of that sort. Whether it was full-time or part-time, the lagoon also brought 15,000 jobs to this area, which not only helps with the water, but also helps with the economy around here, giving more houses and more jobs and more people that need to be cared for. In 2012, this actually drastically changed. Big companies were using this as an advantage. There's so much water that they could just dump whatever they didn't need into the water and just pretty much ruin it for everyone else. They initially did it in the Mosquito Lagoon, which is actually connected to the Indian River Lagoon, and through the flow of water, it actually the majority of the pollution traveled into the Indian River Lagoon, causing a lot of the seagrass to die. From the beginning to the end of summer of 2012, about 60% of the seagrass that was in there ended up dying, and it became mainly sand. This really affected the sea life in the water, especially the manatees. The manatees feed off of seagrass, so them not gaining their food causes them to become very rare, and it stopped a lot of people from being able to see them. They were more careful about how you could approach a manatee rather than just going on like an open boat, and which a lot of people were interested in, you can only go onto the sea bank and not get really close to them. So, and plus you can't really get any money from that because it's public. Whereas the boat would bring in money, and it kind of destroyed an entire industry just by manatees dying. It was like people didn't make their money. A lot of jobs were lost. Not only did that happen once, but there was also a second pollution time. It came from Lake Okeechobee, which is also linked into the Indian River Lagoon. There was discharges that led to nutrient pollution in the lagoon. This also killed the seagrass, but this one actually killed more of the wildlife. The fishes were a lot more fishes died, and it didn't become a very fishable area. A lot more people used to fish on the Indian River Lagoon that they do today. Especially this lagoon was a huge economic loss. It's getting better now because people are starting to recognize it, and there was a lot of marches and people just kind of like stamping their foot and making sure that it was brought back to the way it was. But between 2012 and sort of the beginning of 2014, it was very poorly maintained, and just in general the lagoon. Here's a picture of what the lagoon looks like now. It's nowhere close to as beautiful as it used to be. It's a lot dirtier. And you can see there's just not many people on the water. The next one thing we're going to talk about is unintentional pollution. Here's Wyatt Kinner.
Unintentional pollution plays a huge role in the overall contamination of the world's waters. 80% of pollution to the marine environment comes from the land itself. Although not all of it is under the category of unintentional water pollution, within the part that does, the largest percentage is credited to non-point sources. Non-point sources of pollution are the result of runoff. The second biggest contributor to unintentional water pollution is that of natural disasters. The smallest percentage of unintentional damage to the water are accidents such as oil spills, various other leaks, and shipwrecks. Even if these accidents make up a small percentage, the damage they cause is something that definitely needs to be brought to light and hurts the ecosystem badly. Today I'd like to raise the awareness of how the oil spills actually do influence the ecosystem. Now, most of us remember the oil spill from a few years back that BP had, and there was an estimated 200 million gallons of oil that spilled into the Gulf of Mexico. The Gulf used to look like this, and after the spill, it looked more like this. And more than 8,000 birds, sea turtles, and marine mammals were found injured or dead in the 6 months after the accident. And to explain the longer lasting effects of the sea life, there's a video.
To look at the effects of 200 million gallons of oil spewing into the warm waters of the Gulf of Mexico back in 2010, you can't just look at how small businesses and residents were affected. British Petroleum has already spent $27 billion in claims payments, response, cleanup, and restoration. Let's look at the effects on those without a voice of their own. 4 years out, what scientists at the National Wildlife Federation are finding isn't looking good. 900 bottlenose dolphins have been found dead or stranded in the oil spill area. Those found alive were underweight and anemic and showing signs of liver and lung disease. Sperm whales in the Gulf of Mexico are showing higher levels of DNA-damaging metals than those elsewhere in the world. Loons that winter on the Louisiana coast have increasing concentrations of toxic oil compounds in their blood. Roughly 500 dead sea turtles have been found every year for the past 3 years in the area affected by the spill. Scientists say a chemical in oil from the spill has been shown to cause irregular heartbeats in bluefin and yellowfin tuna. And reproduction for oysters has remained low over large areas of the northern Gulf, at least through the fall of 2012. When healthy, these guys filter a ton of water. The NWF says the oil is not gone, it's on the bottom of the Gulf, it's washing up on the beaches, it's in the marshes. You don't have to dive to the bottom of the Gulf to see the oil, you just need to follow it up the food chain from the plants to sand creatures like oysters, even crabs, to the fish, to the top-level predators like dolphin, bird, and whale.
If the death and injuries of these animals weren't enough for you, it also affected the economy surrounding the spill itself. And 2 years prior to the accident, the commercial fishing industry brought in $659 million of revenue. and after the accident itself, they had to close down commercial fishing for 4 months preceding it. And in closing, oil spills have caused a huge burden on the ecosystem and economy surrounding the accident site. Now to speak about the second biggest contributor to unintentional water pollution, we have Andre.
Nature can destroy its own bodies of water by taking things from mankind and putting them where we don't want them. Natural disasters such as hurricanes, typhoons, tsunamis, and volcanoes are the cause of this. Hurricanes are storms that travel slowly across lands after forming over water, and they use winds to destroy and make debris. So the winds can destroy and uproot different man-made things, such as buildings, roofs, everything. And the storm also rains as it travels. So it causes major flooding, it causes man-made things to be destroyed. And things like houses, as you may not know, but like things like drywall, if they're mixed into waters, it can really damage and pollute the water. And other things such as like plastics and chemicals such as bleach, lotion, everything like that, if they're mixed with water, then it will pollute the water source. So for me, during Hurricane Katrina, my house was flooded about 10 inches of water, and that caused my septic tank to overflow and soften the ground. It overflowed my septic tank mixed with a well that I have and we use for our water, and that contaminated our water source. Now another natural disaster that's even worse than a hurricane in some cases is a tsunami. Tsunamis are caused by an earthquake in the ocean, and the seismic activity on the ground causes the waves to build up into large and tall waves. And with the force that it carries, it doesn't have to be large. As you can see, the palm trees are only about halfway covered, but the power can make the waves go further inland and destroy and wreak havoc inland. And in this example, this is the Tohoku tsunami from 2011 in Japan. And in this one, the earthquake that caused the tsunami was a 9.0, and it wreaked havoc all across the Fukushima coast. And in this, afterwards, after the entire incident, they found that many boats, entire cities, towns and structures were destroyed in the event. Even the Fukushima reactors were, some of them were destroyed because they couldn't disable the reactors and the cores melted, but it kind of shows that some of the other reactors elsewhere weren't affected because they had time to disable, but these ones didn't have enough time, so everything got wrecked, and the radioactive waste that came with it just mixed with the water and even polluted the air and land around it for years. Now I have a video here to show you that the damage was very extensive and it caused damage for years to come. This is a video from 2013 and the event was in 2011.
Another piece of tsunami debris has washed up on the shores of Vancouver Island. An environmental group conducting helicopter surveillance over the North Island spotted the 6-meter Japanese fishing vessel. The skiff is covered in barnacles, but as CTV's Stephanie Sherlock shows us, Transport Canada is working to identify it.
It was Will Salto's first surveillance flight.
The purpose of the helicopter flight was to assess what the situation is with marine debris accumulating on the northwestern end of Vancouver Island.
Living Ocean's Clear the Coast program has a sole purpose: locating, assessing, and removing marine debris. And on January 16th, they spotted this: a 6-meter-long fishing boat.
From what we could see on the boat itself, there was some Japanese writing on the steering system that was still attached to the boat.
Salto says the skiff shows the wear and tear of what was likely an almost 2-year journey.
The boat itself was pretty beaten up, and the amount of gooseneck barnacles growing on it made it difficult to get any actual ID from the boat itself.
It's just the latest debris washing up on BC shores, likely a result of the catastrophic earthquake and tsunami in Japan in 2011.
We're finding bottles and different items from Japan.
Island of garbage floating out there, so it's bound to make its way this way at some point in time.
Earlier this month, this gigantic silo washed up on Haida Gwaii. Last year, a rusted and roughed up Harley Davidson, and lots of cans and bottles.
Soto says that 80% of marine debris is plastic, and most of that is not tsunami related. It is, however, detrimental to the marine environment and to humans.
As plastic breaks down in the ocean into smaller and smaller particles and gets ingested by all kinds of marine species, it begins to work its way up the food chain. It's also affecting human health when humans start eating seafood.
Transport Canada will try to identify the skiff from pictures Clear the Coast has taken. At this point, there are no plans to remove the boat. If you find what you think is tsunami...
Now, another natural disaster that can really affect mostly inland is the volcano. When ash is dispersed into the air, it can contaminate everything in its radius. So this is a photo from Mount St. Helens, and the ash from this volcano eruption spanned 11 states and even Canada, and it contaminated the water. It created rock slides that destroyed the land and the water that was there. These volcanoes, if the explosion is strong enough, it can even cause earthquakes, which can cause further damage. Now, there's a volcano eruption that can happen in the Canary Islands called the Cumbre Vieja volcano, and if it erupts, then it will cause an earthquake that will send a giant tsunami towards the east coast of the Americas and destroy everything on the east coast of America. So that would take many lives, but a lot of the cities would just be destroyed and razed, and that would also be taken into the oceans. Now, there's not really much we can do against these natural disasters because they happen on their own and they can change frequently. So all we can do is just react and clean up our mess and maybe make some countermeasures to areas that could be affected by these natural disasters. So now to talk about illicit discharge is Shakira Robinson.
Illicit discharge. Illicit discharge is an unintentional, intentional form of water pollution. An illicit discharge is a discharge of pollutants into a sewer system drain via a pipe, other direct connection, overland flow, or just dumping stuff directly into your sewer system outside your house. Here I have a picture of household contributors to illicit discharge. Here we have oil from someone changing the oil in their car, which when it rains, it can wash off into your sewer system if you don't collect and dispose of your oil properly. Andre was talking about the septic tanks. If they are not properly taken care of, they can also leak into our sewer systems, affecting the discharge. We also have yard waste and fertilizers that can also run off into your sewer systems, collecting and building up illicit discharges. Next, I have a video that is going to explain to you what illicit discharge is, how it's detected, and it's also some sources at the end of the video that you can use if you think that there's illicit discharge affecting your area.
Every day, hidden culprits are polluting our streams and waterways, and the life that resides in them. Illicit discharges get into our streams through leaking sewer lines, improper disposal of paint and chemicals, and even people doing simple things like washing cars near a storm drain. Some may be apparent by their odor or appearance. Other discharges are harder to detect and require a series of water quality tests along with some detective work to find the source of this pollution. One way we can help eliminate this problem is by working with businesses, homeowners, municipal utility departments, and others to prevent illicit discharges in the first place. By preventing, finding, and fixing illicit discharges, we can once more have clean and healthy waterways. To find out more about illicit discharges and other clean water actions, visit the Center for Watershed Protection website at www.cwp.org or your local government's stormwater program.
I hope that gives you a better understanding of what illicit discharge is and how important it is for us to do our, due diligence to make sure that we reduce our illicit discharges into our sewer systems. Illicit discharge results in this. This is the St. Lucie River. Although this is not in Brevard County, this is in a part of Florida, and this does happen here in Brevard County. Our sewer systems actually distribute out into the Indian River Lagoon, and our illicit discharges also run, off into our canals. Now, I find myself wondering, how does our aquatic life live in an environment like this? They can't. They won't be able to survive. And on the news recently, we actually just had a few hundred fish wash up in someone's canal in their backyard, and my best guess is it's because of illicit discharges. This also comes down the line to us, as you heard in a previous video, as it affects humans directly because we eat aquatic life. So would you want to eat something that was living in this? I don't think so. So I hope that you all can do your part in minimizing illicit discharge. You may wonder, how can you do this? You can do this by doing a few simple things like taking your car to a car wash instead of washing it at your house. Seeking alternative and natural forms of fertilizer and pesticides for your yard. Cleaning up your yard waste, putting it in your yard waste cans instead of sweeping it into the street where it will wash down into your sewer system. You can also collect your rainwater, which would minimize the flow of water into the sewer systems. Collecting your rainwater is also useful for other things like watering your grass, filling your pool back up, and more interestingly, you could filter it, boil it, and drink it if you had to. So in a natural disaster, you might want to think to collect your rainwater if you don't have bottled water nearby. Next, we have Archie Lapalainen, who is going to discuss overfishing.
In Brevard County, fishing is a really big part of our economy. In the river, we fish for trout, which we have the biggest sea trout in the country. And then offshore, we fish for many species like red snapper, mahi-mahi, sailfish, but those species are in trouble. Here's a guy fishing on the beach for pompano, snug, redfish, but that's actually bad, because what happens then is sharks see all the fish in the shore, and they start migrating towards closer to the beaches, which, as many of you would know, sharks can kill people. So do you really want to kill each other just to get some fish? Here is a red snapper population chart over the last couple of decades. As you can see, in the 1950s, there was well over 35 million red snapper in the South Atlantic. And just 6 decades later, they're down to less than 5 million. Right now, we're starting a restoration process of trying to get them back up to the 35 million, and they have grown in population some more. So you might ask, how can we help restore these fish? Well, right here is the Florida Fish and Wildlife Commission, or the FWC, and they put fishing regulations on species of fish that are in danger. So you can only keep like a certain amount of fish, the size that they have to be, and hopefully that these will restore our fish populations here, making a bigger impact to our troubled economy right now. So in conclusion, I would like to introduce Jessica Fredericks.
This is our goal, for our water to be clean and safe in hope of safe biologist Silver Earl's quote into consideration, a movement has already began. Over 600,000 volunteers in 92 countries picked up more than 12.3 million pounds of trash along the shoreline in 2013 alone. So today, we have informed you of the habits of our bodies of water and how they affect us. I hope you have learned from this and will help contribute to saving our waters.